I can hear a rumble.
Good evening. It's the heater starting in them for the morning here.
Oh, no, I just meant I heard someone kind of enter the room, that's all. So,
Oh, I see.
so that's a good thing. I don't think we'll be very busy today. So I'm just checking a thing here on the app. 1 second. Okay, good. I have to keep checking if there's any bad or good reviews for author. It would be nice if that could be emailed, but it's fair enough checking manually. So how are you?
I'm good. We have just finished the work year, and so I have my time is my own for the next couple of weeks. Well, my time is my own and my family's, and we won't be doing any travel or anything. So we'll have the time to play at our houses, and I've been looking at some of the text stuff that I was talking about, seeing what I can understand and glean from videos and sort of the times and instances of specific utterances, which doesn't have a clear path to information that can be used to sort of structure navigation through it yet, but it is interesting. I'll do a screen grab. I can show you what it looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I just uploaded a new video today. Pretty fun.
Microphone still. I need to do that.
Have you seen this post on Mac Rumors today about how your favorite apps would have looked on Mac OS 9?
I haven't.
It's quite cute. Trying not to get sentimental over that era.
There's a lot to get sentimental about with regard to the way in which applications were developed. There was a video I watched recently online, unfortunately, internally, from Bud Dribble, who up until recently was the senior vice president for, I think, essentially privacy, and he talked with some candor about some of the intentions behind Mac OS, and things like having the single mouse button was, I don't think that needs to be particularly secret, is that the reason why there was a single mouse button was that that meant that you could observe somebody just by looking over the shoulder, and every time they clicked, you could tell which button it was because there was only one. So it was in the effort toward the end of being a learnable and a socially learnable interface, making sure that the mechanisms that people use to get around a computer were as transparent as possible. And I think that that's one of the things that the hidden swipes and taps and dwells that iOS lives on are somewhat counter to some of those original principles. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair point, but I do think the users are growing with the system. So a new user to iOS today, yes, a lot of it would be incomprehensible, like swiping up, to unlock your phone and that kind of stuff. But once you get used to it, it is very good. So it must be a very difficult balance when trying to build a tool ideally for everyone.
Yes, yeah, and that's an inevitability that people will struggle between creating something that is easy and something that is fast, and meeting people to some extent where they are, and that's what the fundamental disagreement that Doug had with so many people was that he believed that there was power in asking for more time to train people, whereas the folks who broke away and went to Park and other places said, we don't believe that it's reasonable to expect that much training time. He wanted 2 months for a mouse, and people said you have maybe 5 minutes. And yeah, the result for computing is what we see in front of us. But yeah, recognizing that that's a choice.
Yeah, no, absolutely, it is a choice, and it's an interesting choice. And I was leaning towards Doug on this very much. However, there's no reason to have a barrier if it's not necessary. So get rid of nonsense you don't need. But I try not to dwell on that discussion too much, although I'm very happy you bring it up, purely because I think today we have an opportunity to serve everybody. If someone wants to learn how to skateboard, give them a skateboard. If they want to learn how to use a tricycle, give them a tricycle. At least, now there are different apps and different environments for the different users. And if we do it well, of course, we can combine them with some sort of learning curve, ideally. But did you get a chance to listen to my BBC radio thing with Vint this week?
I haven't yet. I'm not sure whether we have access to it, but I'll take a look for it.
It's just on the web, and it's not. There's no particular need, but it's just our bit was pre-recorded, and they asked at the end. So, Frode, how would this system, author and reader with visual meta, benefit the average reader who's not an academic or an author? So I first talked about all kinds of things, and I said, no, can I do it again? And then I said, it's not really for the average user. The average user can have their things, but we're trying to give people the opportunity, like a gamer who wants to learn all the controls, or someone who wants to play an instrument.
Yes.
That's more the audience, and so different audiences, different intentions, of course. A bit easier to do that.
I'm a big fan of something Steve Jobs said once, which is easy things should be easy, hard things should be possible.
Yes, there was I'm just looking at the link here. Let me see. This looks quite different, actually. I'm going to send you a different link.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that quote, and I also remember that there was a while, I think it was OS 9 actually, where you could so easily modify the toolbar items at the top of the screen. You could tear them off so easily, and I was thinking that is too easy to do something that should be hard. So I thought that kind of just stuck in my mind together.
Yes, yeah. There have been a number of ways people can get themselves in a lot of trouble in applications that have followed that model. Microsoft Word at various points has been configurable to the point of danger as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I ran a website called something like Mac or appleblunders.com. That's what it was called, appleblunders.com. I ran that, and there were many suggestions on there. That was Mac OS 8 times, where there were a lot of inconsistencies. And one thing I did want to see is the system folder that should have a background with black and yellow bars to just really tell the user, stay away unless you know what this is. Oh, such days. Anyway, yeah, I put you should be able to click on the podcast in the chat and listen to that whenever, if you want to. There's also the transcript that I got done.
Thank you. Yes, I see them and I can visit them. There are sometimes BBC will geofence things, so that outside of the UK they're not available, but these do seem to be playable. So that's good.
Oh yeah, this is BBC World Service. So I was hoping that by definition they should honor the world. I had an interesting couple of discussions, expert interviews with people over the last few days. Yesterday was Esther Dyson. And we had, well, she suggested, you got an email from me today, right? You were in that email?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I haven't read it yet, but
oh no, that's fine.
Working up.
But the thing that she talked about outside of that was I showed her the very simple defined terms and glossary and all of that stuff. And she wanted more, richer, wider. And I think that goes to the discussion you're saying now. I would love to have a little, defined terms dialogue, and you click a reveal triangle and suddenly, whoa, you can start defining relationships and stuff, do whatever you want, super high level or detailed or whatever. And then we go into, whether it's virtual or whatever, different ways to view this stuff and flows. And yeah, that'll be fascinating if we can. Hope that will be possible.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting that so many people have shied away from semantic significance within the context of writing. I don't know if you ever did you pay attention to the excited claims that Windows was making, or Microsoft was making, around the time of Windows Longhorn, called of a concept called WinFS?
No, I don't remember that. Remind me, please. I mean, I've heard the name Longhorn, but that's it. Yeah,
so Longhorn was, I guess, the code name for Windows prior to about Windows 7. And so as such, it was something that Microsoft was touting plans from about 2003 to 2006 on, before they started to realize, well, maybe 2008. And WinFS was the idea that they could have a new filing system metaphor, which was going to be fundamentally relational. So in the same way that there's a lot of meta information available on images and files at the moment, macOS uses sidecar files to encode additional information, but there's some meta information that's sort of understood to be allowed in a number of other files, which can get people into trouble because parsing often results in buffer underflow or overflow errors in PNGs, and you can end up with zero-click attacks. But be that as it may, WinFS would take the view that the information about, say, participants in an email would be semantically relevant and distinct entities that could be addressed, indexed, and linked as a matter of course for the filing system. So to that end, you might have an email program, which is essentially just the file browser of your emails that cross-links to the file browser of your people, your contacts list.
Right.
And so moments in time could be understood to be elements and entities in their own right as well. Ultimately, it became too confusing and unwieldy as a metaphor because it was so grand. And so any sort of mention of it as a thing that Microsoft was considering was ultimately dropped. But it was a really exciting concept, and some of the write-ups that they had for what it might be for, and some of the things that one might do with it were really appealing.
Yeah, that's an interesting issue. It's a little beyond. Yeah, it's a little beyond. I just wanted to show you a few seconds of video. It's the same link as above, but it's at a time point. Could you have a brief look at that, please? Please tell me when you clicked so I know what to tell you.
Sure, I've clicked now.
Okay, so the only thing I want to show here is when you do a thing to liquid flow, it collapses down developed by. So the idea there was just that the link types are as important as what they link to. So
Yes.
you can choose which level of collapsing for which kinds of things. So, you know, almost like springy, you can just pull more out or less, and different ways of stacking. You know, this is years old. I just made it so I can put it in my thesis, is saying this is the stuff I was doing until I realized we didn't have an infrastructure. So I had to stop and do that instead.
Yes. Now that is really nice to be able to manage the complexity of what a node graph is. A lot of the time, people will, when they're sort of showing off node graph based concepts, will sort of wallow in places where the visual complexity is low enough that the challenge is inherent in arranging and presenting them don't become clear. But if you try to generate a node graph, even of a simple thing like not even all of the links in a Wikipedia article, but the top 5, then you very quickly run into a graph that looks confusing enough that it is pretty challenging to present it in a way that makes more sense to people than just presenting them with a linearized list of things to navigate through.
Completely agree. I think that's the challenge, and this is where you need interactivity, and this is where you need a learning curve, where in the beginning you can't do much, but for an expert user, like a sculptor working in a very, very rich environment like this, you know, they can tangle it like crazy, but they'll be able to make some use of those tangles. Of course, we should make it as untangled as possible by designing it to begin with. But
yes, and to that end, it's been pretty fascinating to learn about things like social network analysis and some of the data visualization techniques that they have for being able to arrange and structure graphs in a way that maximizes sort of legibility of the high-level details of them. The Lada Adamic's course on social network analysis was really interesting for her presentation of some of the more popular kind of graph things.
That's really
graph visualizations, like the core and Herald fast multi-scale, so that you can see graphs that and potentially scale sub-networks of it in such a way as to maintain the significance of this is a node and these are islands, and they are important, but they're important to this kind of smaller archipelago of nodes, and so then you scale them such that that shape can be relevant, but it doesn't interfere with other ones.
So that reminds me of something. I know you think, and I agree with you, that modern games haven't advanced very much. The only thing they've advanced is graphics, of course, and a little bit of gameplay, but not fundamentally. But one thing they do have that's relevant to this, I think, when you pick up one rifle and shoot them up or another one, you can feel the difference. And I find that really fascinating. You know, it's buttons, sound, and vision, but they feel completely different. So I'm just wondering, with the kind of gloves and things that you're working with, are we at the point where if you're dealing with a graph in a dimensional space where you can literally, like you have this squishy thing on iOS, you can actually have a real feel of pull and push, that these connections are solid, these are a bit springy and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I don't personally work with gloves, but I have played with hands, and so things like the Oculus Quest and other headsets have the ability to do hand tracking without any devices and without any inputs. But people will apply friction of various kinds, and so rather than having things track the velocity of your hand directly, then you can attenuate it based on mass or distance, things like that. And people have had some success creating representations and visualizations of a lot of different physical phenomena in terms of drag, in terms of moment of inertia. And so, knowing not just that something is heavy, but that the center of mass is some distance away from the grip point, things like that. There's a really, really great demonstrator, somebody who's building something called the Hand Physics Lab, Dennis Kunert. And he has a really phenomenal set of interactions. One of the benefits of virtual reality over augmented reality, I'll just get his link so you can see some of his work. One of the benefits of virtual reality over augmented reality is that you're not obliged to re-represent what is happening in real life. So something that a lot of folks do in, actually maybe not that video, but that is the person, but that's not a great video of his stuff. He has a lot of really nice shorter clips of things that he's been doing. In virtual reality, you have the benefit of being able to redirect where hands are. So in Half-Life Alyx, for example, if you pick up something the size of a phone, you move your hand up like this, and it moves up that much. If you pick up something the size of a pickaxe or heavier, you move your hand up like this, it only moves up this far. Augmented reality, for all of its benefits, still presents some challenges insofar as you're obliged to represent. But for one thing, you typically won't represent hands per se, because your hands are there. So unless you have the ability to overwrite them essentially and black them out, then the best representation of the hands is the one that you can see. But that means that you can't change the position that they are, so that you don't have those abilities to attenuate and move things around. But what you can do is sort of, rather than implying that something is directly in a hand, you can have it lag, as long as that doesn't break whatever sort of rules of immersion for what you're doing within the system, so that a light object will be picked up like this, a heavy object will be picked up like this, so that you can see that you're exerting some force to control it, but you don't have the ability to pull it one for one in the same way as you would something that doesn't have any kind of mass aspect. Those things are sort of present within video games as well. And when you're talking about the gunplay and the feel of different weapons and items within video games, that's one of the main sort of handles they're pulling essentially. And they're available within virtual reality as well, but it depends a great deal on what other sort of representations you're sort of signing up for and are obliged to use. To the end of visualization of graphs being easier within virtual reality, that is also definitely true. I talked to somebody who is part of a group in San Francisco many years ago, in the before times, about analyzing and visualizing a fairly dense connected graph through looking at with their consent, their daughter's social friend graph, just as an example of something that is a dense connected thing. So it was about 1,000 people with, what is the name of the degree, the person who made the degree of graphs? Anyway, it had an average degree of 4 or 5. And so that meant that the average number of out connections per node was that. And so if you look at that in 2-dimensional space, it's a rat's nest. It's pretty complicated. But when he stuck his head into it at about a meter by meter by a meter, he looked at it and he said, "Where is everything? I mustn't have loaded all of the data properly." And that's because while 1,000 is 33 by 33 in 2D space, and so you have a pretty dense sort of array of things. In 3D, it's 10 by 10 by 10. So if you're looking at things, then it's actually a fairly sparse graph if you have the ability to represent depth and distance properly. And so he was able to appraise all of the individual nodes within it to such a clarity that it made it feel as though he was looking at manifestly different data. So I think that I'm really optimistic about you still come up against limits. If you look at the out degree and the in degree of popular Wikipedia pages, they're not 5, they're more like 200 or 1,000. so that our popular and good articles on Wikipedia often have something on the order of 1,000 links in them. And if you want to analyze anything like that, then you're going to have to come up with abstractions, no matter what kind of dimensionality or representation you are coming up with, because there's nothing that the human sensory system is going to be able to understand at that level of just raw and direct representation.
That is really cool and very interesting, and I look forward to more discussion, but I have been told I have to go. There's a family thing I need to deal with, I'm afraid. Okay. Which is really annoying, because this is an amazing topic. I was just thinking, you know, the Apple Watch knows when I squeeze my hand. I know that's one of the accessibility things. So of course, you know, having two devices like that and having details and augmented by everything, I could imagine one day we're sitting in the laptop and then we just decide to just put it all in the room and do the kind of stuff for real. I think we need to have serious discussions about that in the community.
Yeah, no, that's definitely on the cards. And Facebook, among others, has built electromyographic armbands and wristbands such that they can analyze all of the electrical activity somewhere along the wrist. I actually have one somewhere here, so that you can fully instrument around here or here, and then you know all of the movements and positions of the fingers. You can also do things with acoustic modeling of taps and things like that, so you can tell where you can tap here or here or here and here, and that means that you have full unencumbered sort of understanding of what's happening within hands. Those are R&D project kind of things, but there are consumer products that people are sort of toying with. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, and I hope that we can have a bridge between VR and flats, and I hope that can be something along the lines of what we're discussing here, because VR is virgin territory. The pioneers are going to go in, and we've got to make sure they're not all cowboys, to extend the metaphor. Yes. I mean, that's the danger with a number of entities participating on the scene right now, is that they don't necessarily have the same view of what privacy should constitute. This is the armband here, so you can see the electrodes in it, and those are able to assess based on the number of electrodes that exist. Let's continue this Monday or Friday, and thank you very much for coming by today. I put a little Christmas card in here for you, and thank you very much. Have a good Christmas weekend, and talk to you soon. Yes. Okay, bye for now. Enjoy your family. Yeah. Bye.